Hi, I'm Willie. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. And what we're going to do in this video is I've got about 22 questions, comments on the last two Synology domain controller videos, and I need to follow up on those. But while you're here, make sure that you like this video and subscribe and share. And if you need IT consulting, you know what to do. We'll be coming back to that here shortly. So let's hop on over to the questions and get right to it. So the first comment here, PLR Pilot says, this video series is spot on for what I need. You can't get this series out fast enough. Thanks. Then Christopher Leslie 8343 says, I can't lie. It's been okay, but I've yet to see more than a handful of production environments using a Linux AD alternative in over 15 years. I think if it works and doesn't break, check mark, but this is more for small business and home that don't have many needs. Alternatively, you could virtualize your AD properly on the Synology, which would be better as long as you have two ADs. Well, there's actually quite a bit more to just virtualizing a Windows server. So there's a lot that actually goes into when you're actually dealing with Windows, virtualizing and making sure you're doing it correctly. There's things with the hard drives that you have to worry about, and about activity levels and things like that. So you could virtualize it, but then you have to buy Windows licenses. Now, the thing is, when you use the Synology solution, you're going to save a lot of money. And most people very rarely use everything that Active Directory can do. Most people just skim the surface. And for those people who want to, deploy printers and want to deploy file shares and do roaming profiles and all those things, this is perfect. And Christopher, I have seen a lot. We manage a few clients that do this. And so, and in the past, I've used some other Linux distros to do it. I wasn't a fan of it then, but it just keeps getting better all the time. All right, number two. Andy A688 says, fantastic series, Willie. Half of my customers already run Synology for years as they are small. I am fully transitioning, upgrading, replacing traditional Windows Server 80 primary vendor hardware-based solutions entirely with fully redundant Synology-based private cloud solutions, and that is fantastic. And then Christopher comes back again. Christopher Leslie 8343 says, as long as you're redundant, I think you're spot on. Willie, why happens when the controller breaks in this case? What's the recovery look like in time? So it's having a Synology domain controller, a single box, is the exact same as having a single Windows box. You have all of those same problems. If your box dies, if you have all these things, you still have those same challenges, whether it's Windows or Synology. So you can't just say that this is a Synology problem. It is a problem even with Windows if you only have one server and no plan. Alan Luke 2040 says, thanks for the series. Most interesting. Always hated dealing with Microsoft licensing. Many hours of my life gone and unrecoverable dealing with it. The worst. If this is a truly supportable AD platform, then I'm interested in what is to come. For this to be a truly supportable platform, it must have a video regarding disaster recovery planning, recovery to bare metal, or maybe it requires a second domain controller and transfer of FSMO roles. Must include a video or two of actual backup restore process, a truly tested backup, and duplicatable recovery process. The AD solution should not be used in production without a robust disaster recovery process. Thanks again for the content. Once again, that's the same with Windows in a single box. So loud and clear. And a lot of these things that you're going to see, I'm going to touch on these, but I'm going to host a 3-hour in-depth Synology Active Directory training that you can join. So there's a training interest form link down below. Go click on that and sign up and get your name on the list for the training. It'll be 3 hours, Zoom. You'll have to have a Synology, and we're going to go through in-depth things. Next question. Awesome video, Willie. I would love to see how you handle setup Synology ADS and a unified network with the UDM acting as a DNS server. So as you saw in my last video about prepping your network, what you do is you can leave. So the DNS server should be the Synology. But then what you do is you have a forwarder from the Synology to the UDM so that whatever the Synology doesn't know, it forwards to the UDM. The UDM takes care of it. Now, people were asking about putting secondary DNS in, and we're going to touch on that in another video. Perfect timing, Willie. Our business has a Google Workspace Business Plus subscription, and I'm thinking of deploying a Google centralized something for Windows. I don't have any experience with that, but if it's like a centralized authentication mechanism, I'm sure you could get it to work. A lot of these have proxy services and things like that. If it doesn't have native support, you can often get it to work using LDAP, things like that. PE4 Doer says, Willie, could you cover drive mappings that follow the users and roaming profiles? Yes, we're going to do that. Light series of that in a video, and then in-depth in that training. Have you considered to test Sentinel? Yes, I have tested a lot of those Linux distros. He says, and this is Kirkstein Klauber 260, I just tested it and kind of like it, and you don't need to depend to have a Synology NAS to get a local AD server. Well, yeah, that's great, but then you still have to have another box, or you're virtualizing on something. But there are a lot of Linux distros that can do this. I'm not discounting them, but when I have an all-in-one box like a Synology, it makes a lot more sense. Jim Holloway 1785 says, can you do some home share folders and group share folders like admin families? Yes. So a lot of the stuff that Jim is talking about is shares and how things get moved around and remapped, and we are going to touch on those, like remapping the My Documents folder and things like that. That will be a little bit more advanced and will be in that training. So make sure you get the training interest form filled out. This is Co Norton says, what are the best practices for backing up a domain controller on Synology? So you can use Hyper Backup and back up all of the configuration and send it to another NAS, or send it to C2. We will do a video on this. Jason Perry 6046 says, this is something I'm interested in but have zero experience with it yet, so please forgive me if my question is too far out in left field. How does this compare with other solutions such as Zential? How does something like Pi-hole fit in if I decide to use a domain controller? Now you have me thinking, can I use it to log into my Wi-Fi network? So Jason, thank you for the questions. Let me answer these. So all of the Linux solutions, all of the BSD solutions, all of the Mac solutions are running Samba when it comes to integrating Windows. So this is built, the Synology is built on Samba, just like Sentinel is built on top of Samba. So let's get that out of the way. How does something like Pi-hole fit in? So as we talked about earlier with forwarders on the Synology DNS, if you've got your Pi-hole, what you do is you still change your DNS to go to the Synology NAS first, and then you have a forwarder that goes to your Pi-hole. So whatever the Synology doesn't answer gets forwarded to the Pi-hole. Pi-hole does its magic. Can you use it to log into my Wi-Fi network? So absolutely yes. If your Wi-Fi can do WPA Enterprise, where we authenticate against either Active Directory or LDAP or whatever, yes, we can use this Active Directory setup to authenticate your Wi-Fi users. Oh, make sure. All right, next question. Willie, can you, and this is Pinocchio 79. Willie, can you set up AD as a domain print server and use AD policies to deploy to workstations? I tried it on a DS218 Plus, but it failed at the point when it started to download the printer drivers to Synology AD. My question, is it possible or not? Have you done it? You can do some printer sharing with this. So this is where you're going to see some of the shortcomings of this not being a Windows platform. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll install printers, network printers on the server using the IP address, so an IP port, and then what you do is you publish those out to Active Directories, push them to the groups, the users, and things like that. It is not as straightforward with this, but it is possible, so stay tuned for that. That's something that will be in that in-depth training. Strikes Back says, I appreciate that Synology offer this, and I played around with it in the past, but there isn't any scenario outside of a home network or lab that I would be willing to implement this. And that's cool. Your mileage may vary. We have customers who run this. My question is, why wouldn't you? So Strikes Back, if you see this, please let us know why you wouldn't run this. Pi Wozniak says, "Hello, Willie. Great video as always. Thank you. Interesting idea, but it's got some potential consequences to consider when creating an AD. Running single AD controller is not a great idea. So to make this at least sort of by the book, you'll need 2 devices. Not going to disagree that if you want high availability, you'll need two devices. Now, you could either run them in HA or you could do PDC, BDC. But I will tell you, as a consultant and as having been in IT for 22 plus 25 years, somewhere in that ballpark off the top of my head, you know how many places I see that have a single server? A lot of them. 2, there's no PDC and BDC anymore, and you're starting with an obsolete configuration. Sure, it will work, but still. So what he's talking about here is you just have domain controllers. What he's not telling you is you can have 50 domain controllers, but if they're not configured correctly, they're not going to authenticate logins. So he did miss the detail there. So besides PDC, BDC, this is a very nice, simple way to think about it. But there's a lot that goes into FSMA roles and other things in Active Directory on the back end that he left out of number 2. So we'll be addressing that in another video. Pi Wozniak says, I've never looked into running AD on these, but how granular is group policy management on these? User profiles with redirected folders? Yes, and we're going to get into that. There will be a video on that. It's not going to get super deep into the weeds. That's what the training is going to be for. Wouldn't it make more sense if money is the issue to buy a used server? Well, here's the thing. Licenses don't always transfer with the server, and if you buy a used server, maybe you're buying a Windows Server 2008 that's obsolete, so now you're going to put obsolete software in your network? No thanks. So there's a lot that goes into buying a used box. I'd rather buy a Synology and do it this way. Pi Wozniak says, in my humble opinion, it makes perfect sense to host user folders on Synology, use it for backups, or run containers. But hosting on AD on a device that does the same times a lot of other things, I don't know, man. So my clients get tired of me telling them that if we are doing Active Directory on a Synology, that it's doing that and file sharing, and that's it. And the DNS, the things that come with those. If you're running Surveillance Station, that's on another box. If you're doing all these things. So I believe in putting as few of functions as possible in the event of a failure on a single box. So you and I agree on that. Jason Luong 3862 says, what does Microsoft think about Synology poaching its product? Is it legal? Sure, all the codes are Synology. So I think that that's why it was renamed, because it used to be named Active Directory, and now it's Synology Directory Server. So I think there was something that happened there. I'm sure they ruffled some feathers, but like I said earlier, this is running Samba on the back end. You can Google Samba. Chin Quan Jian asks, can a user still change their own password if the secondary domain controller is set to read only? Yes, because it goes through a main domain controller. Mo Clonus says, what the heck am I supposed to do with all the money for cows? And I said, go get lunch. Punzada says, call me paranoid, but there's no way I'm ever using Synology as a DC in a production environment. Sounds like asking for unsupported trouble for little benefit when a small Windows VM will work just fine. Okay, so what are you virtualizing Windows on? Free version of ESXi with no support? So let's put some things in perspective. What are you going to do? Virtualize it on a Synology? So here's the thing. Synology actually has a United States phone number that you can call for support, and they are actually very active. I've actually been very happy. At first I was surprised, but now I've been very happy. A lot of my clients will run into things not necessarily related to Active Directory, but they call the number, they get a response. We get through support very quickly with Synology these days. But I don't go around the internet trashing them, so I've got a very good working relationship with them. My customers have very good working relationships with them. So, overall, I've been unimpressed with a lot of Synology on the software side. Hyper backup and the built-in replications were just not reliable enough in production. So I don't know what you're doing. This is one of those things where somebody drops a comment and then doesn't back it up, can't back it up. And I'm not trying to talk stuff, but I'm just saying you drop this comment, and I've replaced entire Veeam infrastructures with Active Backup for Business and Hyper Backup, and it works day in, day out, and we test it monthly, sometimes weekly, depending on what users' shenanigans are happening. And then ends it with, I do still love them as simple iSCSI targets. They work great as iSCSI targets. Pi Wozniak says, I hope I didn't sound negative commenting your last video. Hey, are you planning on creating a secondary zone on another Synology and setting up zone transfers? Great video and interesting topic. AD on. Thanks. So no one in these comments, let me say this, no one has offended me. No one has upset me. It's the internet, right? And Pi Wozniak has been a supporter of the channel for a long time. You didn't sound negative, right? We're all trying to figure this out. I'm here to instruct you as the professional, as the one with the knowledge. I'm putting this out there so that other people can take it and run with it. I do like the idea of, because my webmin videos still get a lot of traffic, maybe I should do a Synology DNS server video at exactly what you're talking about. Thanks for the idea. Co Norton says, Willie, could you do a quick video on setting up a local NTP server on the network and pointing a Windows domain controller to it? That is probably a topic for the training, but let me think about that. Bird203 says, not all routers support the DHCP option. Try doing this on a Netgear MR60 mesh system. So here is my solution for that. If you have a situation where your DHCP is weird on your router and doesn't support some of the things, disable it and enable DHCP on the Synology. I will cover that in a video. Jason Luong 3862 says, so the Synology NAS acting as the DC can also host an AD and dispense group policy rules. Yes. Can you explain what the Synology DC can and cannot do compared to a Windows Server DC? So the printing stuff is a lot different, So that's something that we'll talk about in a dedicated video. Jason says, I have always associated a DC and a Microsoft Windows network with Active Directory and group policy. So we're going to join a machine to the domain in the next video, and then we're going to manage the Active Directory using Microsoft's tools, and you're going to see how that's done, and you're going to see how we get into the weeds, and then anything advanced, of course, will be in that training. Jason Perry 6046 says, another video already, I'm getting spoiled. Questions. Do I need to restart all the devices on the network for them to join the domain? So what you need to do is either do an ipconfig renew to get the new DNS to point it there and then join it, or you could reboot it. But then once you join a Windows machine to the domain, yes, you need to reboot it. And that is the end of the questions. So if you've got more questions, put them down below. I'm going to have to do these videos in between all the other videos, but a lot of this stuff, the more in the weeds stuff, we are going to do in that. It's going to be a 2 or 3 hour Zoom training, right? So that link is down in the description. And if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe, comment, and share. Follow me on Twitter and TikTok. Those links are down below, along with affiliate links, a Patreon link. And if you need IT consulting, reach out at williehowe.com. Click hire us or contact us. Fill that information out, and someone will be in touch with you as soon as possible. Once again, I'm Willie. I want to thank you for being here. And as always, I'll see you in the next video.